Everyone, we're here with Dr. Billy Feingold. Dr. Feingold is my best friend. I've known him since, how long was it, fifth grade?
Yeah, I mean, I think we went to Beth Shalom together for a while. Didn't really hang out until junior high.
Been a while. Dr. Feingold is a board certified in internal medicine, right?
Yeah, internal medicine, but I practice hospital medicine, so I'm a hospitalist.
And he's an MBA, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Dr. Feingold works out of, is it Baylor in Dallas?
Yeah, Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas. We are a 900-something tertiary care center in downtown Dallas, and I mostly just I only do hospital medicine, but every now and then I also do resident teaching as well.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
a few other things. So
that's cool. Yeah, I wanted to have him on. I mean, he's in the front lines, and I wanted to talk more about like what it is that he's seeing and the conditions he's seeing. Hopefully some of our viewers can take some tips away, and it's hard because like in CNN, Fox News, like they give you all this mumbo jumbo, and it's hard to digest like what's actually going on.
yeah,
So
there's a lot of noise.
I don't know. So number one, thank you for your service and for helping out, and I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And I also want to take a quick moment to give a special thanks to the nurses and the emergency medical first responders. They are truly the first line. They're the ones that spend the most time in direct contact with patients with COVID. And we appreciate what they do for us. So, as far as what we've been seeing is we've been lucky in Dallas in the sense that the social distancing has worked. It's been, knock on wood, slow. My fear is it's not going to stay that way. As soon as things do let up, my concern is that we are going to probably see things surge again in 2 to 3 weeks after. I do believe people need to get ready for the long haul in terms of kind of life not being as normal as it used to be, and us having to adjust to society. But in terms of what I see the people who have COVID who have it bad enough to require hospitalization. And when people are lucky in the hospital, it just means that we might hold you overnight to make sure that you can maintain good oxygen saturation. And by that, we mean the amount of oxygen you breathe in, its ability to saturate your bloodstream so your bloodstream can use it for your body's functions. If you're, lucky, you might need some oxygen, but you might not need it for long. You might not need it at all. We monitor you maybe for 1 or 2 nights, and then we get to send you home. Those that aren't lucky, though, they're getting what's called hypoxic respiratory failure, in which their body's ability to maintain the oxygen levels in the bloodstream are not working. They need supplemental oxygen, and some of them need high amounts of supplemental oxygen. Some of them, unfortunately, even need to be intubated and placed on a mechanical ventilator, in which case they are put in a chemical coma. All of them, for the most part, are presenting the typical way in which you hear in the news. They're all coming with complaints of shortness of breath, a dry cough, meaning it's not wet, there's not mucus coming up. They just keep on hacking a dry cough. They're feeling, a lot of them, when they say they have chest discomfort, it's not your typical heart attack type chest pain where it's like, I feel like an elephant's on my chest, or I feel like I'm having a sharp pain in the left side of my chest. And all of them are defining it pretty specifically. They're saying that it feels like I can't get air in. I'm breathing as deeply as I can, and there's just something in there that's taking up the space in my lungs where the air should go.
What's that? What causes that?
It's a lot of them. It's because of inflammation and sometimes fluid buildup. You probably heard on the news when they look at the CAT scans, a lot of these people, what they call ground glass opacities. Ground glass opacities is what you see with people who have fluid that's built up in what's called the alveoli of the lungs. Your lungs are a complex network of tubes. And at the very end of those tubes are what are called alveoli, which are just air sacs that expand and contract. When you breathe in oxygen, the oxygen diffuses through the air sac, goes into the bloodstream, and the body does with it what it needs to do with it. In exchange, carbon dioxide goes into the air sacs and you breathe that out. If you've got fluid or something impeding that, you can't do that as well. And so that's what you see on the CAT scan is these ground glass opacities, this fluid that's building up that's keeping them from getting the air in. Um, Sometimes we get lucky and these people just need some oxygen to help. You give them some oxygen so they have even more oxygen they're breathing in, so more
Yeah.
can diffuse through the alveoli. Some of them, though, it gets bad enough where even high amounts of oxygen aren't working, and you need to take over the actual mechanics by which their lungs work.
Yeah.
You've probably heard the term ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome. That's happening not really because the virus itself causes that. It's our body's immune response that causes it. Um,
Overreaction, right? That's what
yeah,
I'm
it's an
hearing.
overreaction in the immune system. Our immune systems are kind of antiquated in the way they work. There's a lot of anthropologic theories as to why our bodies have these violent immune reactions when we get bad enough infections. But my personal belief is that I think it helped preserve the rest of the pack. When we were nomadic peoples thousands of years ago, um, I think these profound immune responses that were counterintuitive to you living that caused your death probably helped the pack to survive because it was like a self-destruct button. It's your body's hitting a self-destruct button so the rest of the pack can live on. One of the main ones we hear about, of course, is sepsis. That's when your body has this response that doesn't seem intuitive to you surviving because it becomes violent and can lead to processes like shock that can kill you.
Yeah.
ARDS is another immune mediated process that doesn't make sense in terms of your body surviving. It actually is what leads to a lot of these people dying. And so,
Are you seeing, I mean, you being in Texas, there's a lot of obese patients or diabetics. Is that the majority of what you're seeing, or do you feel like there's still young people?
yes, the majority of what we see are still people that have comorbidities, diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, chronic smoking history, but we are also seeing people that don't really have any chronic issues. And
Yeah.
I'm talking about, I've seen people in their 30s.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's what I'm concerned about. I mean,
yeah,
I'm 36, not just for myself,
yeah,
but
I,
people in like, the urban areas where there's very little, not only support system, but also they're in tight quarters. And that's what I'm concerned about is like whenever they release the reins and, everyone goes back to work, even with restricted hours and like, you keeping your social distancing and all that. My concern is that the hospital system will again become vulnerable to overcrowding.
and that's the worry. There's a very good interview on the New York Times, the Daily Podcast, with one of their chief medical correspondents who basically has made a specialty for himself in the journalistic world of following pandemics and public health crises. And he has access to the best minds in public health, and every one of them tell him this is not just to June and then life is fine again process.
Yeah.
There was I think it was either a public health individual or epidemiologist who wrote an article called "The Hammer and the Dance." And what they were defining is the hammer is the lockdown. Everybody lock things down. Nobody go outside. The dance, though, is that you're not going to just release things back to normal as they were right away. You're going to dance kind of into it.
Right.
And then as soon as the numbers surge again, lock it down
Lock
again.
it
And I
down.
think what we're going to see is what he said, based on the people he's interviewed, is rolling waves of closing things down and then reopening them,
Yeah.
and life kind of working in shifts. If your kids are at school,
I found that it's difficult because I don't know what your thoughts are about herd immunity, but basically herd immunity it basically means enough people get it to where we all have an antigen and we become immune to COVID-19. But like
right?
the problem is, well, to get herd immunity, we all have to get it. So even though a lot of people, even Dr. Fauci last week said up to 50% may be asymptomatic, that still poses a risk to the people that are vulnerable, like the elderly, the diabetics, that can actually, quite frankly, die from this.
Absolutely. It presents a fascinating, not just public health question, but ethical question. Let's just do the numbers real fast, right? There's 330 million Americans. I'm putting this in my calculator now. If we're looking at a 1%, just a 1% mortality rate, right? So times 0.01. If we have every American eventually get it, if that's what people want to do, open it up, just let people get it and let the strong survive, that's still 3.3 million people dead.
Right.
That is a catastrophic
Agreed.
number. That's the entire city of Dallas
Right.
dead. But on the flip side, we get a lot of criticism as scientists and as doctors and healthcare providers of not understanding the economic fallout. And that's not true. We do. If you don't have a job, you can't make money. If you can't make money, you can't do food, clothing, and shelter in place. And then you can't take care of your health.
Right.
It's going to take strong leadership. It's going to take a lot of compromise to find not the best solution, because there is no best solution, but the best of the worst solutions, if you will.
Yeah. I think it's what's frustrating to me is that a lot of time, and I don't want to go into politics, but I will just a little bit, because I have to voice my frustration, because sometimes it seems like the Trump administration is like, okay, well, the governors, you guys get to decide, but at the same time, I get to tell you guys if I have the last say. But go ahead, liberate Michigan,
Yeah.
liberate Virginia,
Yeah.
and at the same time, well, the governors are doing this and that wrong. I think we have to come together and act as one in order to be able to not only fight this thing, but come up with policies that works for everyone.
Absolutely. The bottom line is, any leadership position done well is a thankless job, in my opinion. And I'm not like a leader of any sort, but my perspective on leadership is that if you're good at it, you become satisfied with the fact that not everyone's going to like you.
Yeah.
None of your decisions will be 100% great, but you've got to realize that in the end of the day, it's about sacrifice and compromise and finding the best of the worst situations. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't feel like we have strong leadership to understand that this is very nuanced, and it takes very delicate balance between the fact that economic catastrophe is a public health crisis in and of itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
But a pandemic is a public health crisis that cannot be ignored. So the balance has to be struck there. And I agree with you. I don't think we have the leadership that's sensitive to that.
We're going to wrap up here, but lastly, what would you say to people that want health tips from a doctor like yourself that's treating COVID-19 patients? Like, what would you say for them to be doing at home, like as far as like working out or vitamin supplementations? Like, what's your advice?
I mean, other than the obvious, which is, respect the shelters in place. If you're needing to be in a public situation, make it sure it is for something essential, like grocery shopping, trips to the drugstore, whatever. Make sure that when you go out in public, you're wearing a mask, trying to keep 6 feet distance. Make sure that you're keeping your hands clean. In terms of gloves, they're not a catch-all. Like, the moment you contaminate, you're a surgeon, well, like whenever you get into the OR, the hands must stay above the waist.
Right.
If you touch anything that's not above the sterile area, it's contaminated.
Right.
So, but other things you can do is, yes, I don't want to suggest these things to give people false hope, because it's not, in the end of the day, none of the things you can do exercise and eating wise is going to guarantee that you won't get severe illness.
Correct.
But there are things that won't hurt. Even though there's not strong evidence for, say, doing like vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and all these things, I'm doing them anyways, because in the end of the day, as long as you're not taking toxic doses, it won't hurt. There is some evidence that maybe it might help in terms of immune mediation.
Yeah.
Getting plenty of sleep is huge.
Huge. Yeah.
We have tons of evidence that sleep might be the number one best thing you can do. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, because you see the joke,
they're like, yeah,
we're doing a lot of it. And the reason why is that sleep's restorative function does a few things for you. One, it helps balance your cortisol levels, which are implicated in not only developing diabetes, but other types of infection and other deleterious effects on your health. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Your bodies aren't meant to live in a state of stress all the time. But yeah, in terms of things you can do, I wish I had something that I could say is like foolproof. There are no prescriptions we can give you right now that will guarantee your health.
Yeah.
But doing things like eating healthily, getting plenty of sleep, having a consistent sleep schedule. You can try vitamin D supplementation as long as it's something that's not beyond a recommended amount. You can try vitamin C supplementation. You can try zinc supplementation. These things won't hurt. There's loose evidence that they might help. But really, if anything, being mindful of what our public health officials are telling us, and doing the distancing, keeping clean, keeping sanitary, and you know, being understanding of each other and your place in society. So,
Yeah, that's great. It's all good tips. I
and
also think,
what I can tell people though is if you feel that you cannot breathe or your breathing is inhibited and you feel like you may have come in contact with somebody, then yes, seek help, because the scariest thing we are seeing is people with mild respiratory symptoms who wait too long, and then when
too late.
it gets bad.
Yeah, that's
So,
all great news. Well, thank you so much, man. I'd love to tap in a couple of weeks and just to see how you guys are doing and if there's any new developments. I appreciate it, man.
yeah, my pleasure, dude. Give everyone my best.
I will. Thank
Take
you.
care.